I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar on the realising of genetic potential of your herd. So this webinar is being run as part of the Teagasc Breeding Week, which takes place from Monday the 24th of March and it runs up until Tuesday the 1st of April. So this week is organised to provide timely reminders for farmers on important genetic and technical issues underpinning a successful dairy breeding season. So on today's webinar, we have Kay O Connell, who's a dairy advisor in the Johnstown office, and Kay will be talking about understanding and selecting specific traits for your herd through the bull selection. Paul Kehoe is a dairy advisor in the Tinahely office, and he'll be talking about how to accelerate your genetic potential through cow selection. Joris Somers is a veterinary practitioner in Tirlan, and he will be giving us a practical advice on the use of sex semen. Joris has been in Tirlan since 2019 and is involved in the herd disease screening and milk culturing services within Tirlan. And finally, then we will have Donal Murphy, who's a dairy farmer based in Ferns in County Wexford. Donal was a winner of the 2024 RDS EBI award for a dam of the AI bull FR6772, and this bull has over 7,000 dairy calving records in the database. So Donal will be joined by his dairy advisor, Martin Doyle, who's based in the Enniscorthy office. Just to note there that there is a Q&A function that we'd ask you to put in any questions that you have. And after each session, we will be answering these questions. I'd also like to note that this webinar will be recorded. So we will kick off there with Paul Kehoe, who will be talking about the cow selection. So Paul, if you want to share your screen.
Thanks, Katie. Can you hear me, Katie?
Yeah, you're all good there.
Excellent. Good morning, folks. I'm just going to talk to you this morning about selecting cows for breeding and not just relying on choosing bulls for breeding or replacement heifers. So just to look at why we would do this. And I suppose in the recent past, since the abolition of quotas, we've had a rapid herd expansion. We had an emphasis on early born heifers. Now we still have this emphasis on early born heifers, but generally they were got from having a set period for dairy AI. So this generally was 4 to 5 weeks of dairy AI because we just didn't have enough heifers to fuel the herd expansion. So as a result, all cows, regardless of whether they were good or bad, got a dairy AI straw, and the resultant heifer calves then were taken into the herd. Whereas now we have more settled herds for, I suppose, well-heralded reasons. We need to get more from the cows that we have in the herd. So I suppose we have sex semen now, which is I suppose we've had a lot of progress in sex semen over the last few years, and as a result, farmers have gained a lot of confidence in using sex semen. So really, when it comes to breeding replacement heifers, this has been a game changer because you're nearly guaranteed heifer calves from your best cows. So what sort of traits are you looking to improve in the herd? For most people, they're looking at kilos of milk solids. I suppose when you look at the Tirlan average for 2024, the average milk solids on spring milk herds was 411 kilos. And likewise, the percentage of fat and protein we would like to improve. Or maybe on good milk herds, fertility may be an issue. So we would look at maybe improving the 6-week calving rate or calving interval on these herds. And cow size and herd health are also traits that farmers would like to improve. So here, what I'm going to do is run through an example herd of mine, and I suppose first of all we're going to look at the EBI herd report. So you can see the performance of this particular herd is 472 kilos. So it's quite a good herd. It's been bred by AI for years. You can see that there are decent butterfat and protein percentages, and that's all taken from the co-op performance report. So what we wanted to concentrate on was one second, was this here, which is this is a cutting from the ICBF herd EBI report. So what we have here are the average figures for this particular herd. So just to have a run through some of the figures, we're looking at the milk figures and fat and protein. So what these figures mean along here is that these figures are in relation to the base cow. So when we look at the milk kilos, we're looking at 108 kilos better than the base cow. Likewise with the fat and protein kilos, they're also a nice bit better than where the base cow is. Um, Similarly with the percentages, they're quite good in this herd, and they all lead into this milk sub-index. So all of these figures here contribute to this milk sub-index figure. Likewise with milk, we have to keep an eye on fertility to make sure that these cows calve every year. So this, as I've said, this would take into account the survivability, the calving interval, and the 6-week calving rate in the herd. Other important figures on this report are the maintenance figures. Um, with maintenance, it's this is to do with the cow size. The higher the maintenance figure, the smaller the cow. The lower the maintenance figure, the larger the cow. And then the last one there's a lot of emphasis being placed on it at the minute is the health figure within the EBI, and that is increasing in reliability every year. So I suppose overall here, what you have is the average of this particular herd. Now, as with all averages, half the cows in the herd are better than these figures, and half the cows are worse than these figures. So what we need to do is pick from the half the cows that are better when we're looking to breed dairy replacements, and the other half of the cows can get beef AI. So what are we looking for in these herds? So here we've a range of cows. Now this range of cows could be in any herd. These cows are from this particular herd. So just to run through them, can be cow A there. She's quite a milky cow, plus 260 kilos of milk. She produces very good fat and protein, but her percentages are down on the base cow. So her percentages are low. So she needs to produce a lot of milk to produce the same kilos of milk solids as a cow with higher percentages. Then we have cow B. This cow is she's minus 45 kilos for milk. Her butter, fat, and protein are quite low, so she's not going to kill herself milking for the year. These cows also are in every herd, and if you haven't been selective culling, and I know we all talk about selective culling, but in practice, there's very little selective culling going on in farms. By the time you account for empty cows, cows with somatic cell count issues, and lameness, there's very little room left for selective culling. So as a result, these cow bees remain in the herd, and what they do, they tend to calve every year at the proper time. They calve in February every year, and they go relatively unnoticed. And now you have cow C. Now this is, I suppose, the most desirable cow in the herd. She's positive for milk kilos. Her bottom fat and protein is quite good, and she has excellent percentages. So I suppose when we're picking cows then to breed from, the first cow we would chop off the list would be cow B. And then if we have enough cow C's in the herd, we wouldn't use cow A. But if we haven't got enough cow C's in the herd, we would use maybe a high fertility bull with very good percentages on cow A. So I suppose that's just a brief run through how we were picking the cows, I suppose in relation to 2 kilos of milk solids. Um, so now for this herd, I've gone looked at the herd average. So the herd average is 172 EBI, and you can see when I've pulled out the best performing herd cows in this herd, we've jumped the EBI up to 217. And with that, the milk sub-index, the fertility sub-index has jumped. Now we're choosing for milk, and we're getting higher fertility. So, and then you can see over here at the end the 24 kilos versus 18 kilos. So it's another 25% roughly on top of the herd average. Um, so just to contrast this, I just going to show you the bottom 30% of the cows in the same herd. So you can see their EBI is back at 148. And when you scroll across here to where their milk solids are less than half what the best performing cows in the herd are doing. So you're making a huge jump forward with genetic gain in this herd by eliminating these cows from the pool of cows you're going to use for breeding replacements. And I suppose then this poses the question, are all your maiden heifers genetically superior? And I suppose on average, when you look at your maiden heifers on your EBI report, yes, they are superior to the cows in the herd. But when you look at them individually, you may see this if you haven't been selecting your cows over the last number of years. What you will find is what I found in this herd. So you needn't worry about the numbers here, but what I just want to get across is each yellow line here is a maiden heifer. So on this farm, he roughly has about 20 maiden heifers, and six of them are showing up in the bottom 30% of females. So these what we'd be recommending for these six heifers would be to get beef AI. Um, so now just to bring it on a step, so what we're doing here now is we're going to put a bull team on the average and on the selected cows in the herd. So um, and this will give us our expected heifer calves for 2026. So when you put this bull team here, it's quite a good bull team, 334 EBI, and they're giving 36 kilos of milk solids on good percentages. When you put this on your average cows, look, you're bringing your EBI from 172 up to 260. And also all the sub indexes have increased along with it. And your milk solids, the I suppose the trait that we were trying to improve for this particular farmer has gone from 18 up to 27. Now, when we're using it on the best cows, you can see we get a further jump, so up to 276 in EBI down here. And likewise, the sub-indexes for milk and for fertility have also jumped. And you can see we're getting an even bigger increase in the percentages compared to where we were using them on the average cow. And the overall kilos of milk solids in heifers expected for 2026 is 30 kilos versus 27. Now, you might say that there's not much in it, but the reliability of this 30 kilos would be far greater than the reliability up here on this 27 kilos. Like you're on the 27, you're looking for an even between good and bad cows having heifer calves, but in reality, that may not be the case. You could have more poorer cows having heifer calves and would bring down the reliability of this figure here. So I suppose it's all pointing towards using your best cows to get the best heifer calves on the ground for 2026. Um, Now, just to put, I suppose, milk value on these heifer calves. So, the heifer calves from the herd average are coming out around 540 the potential is 540 kilos of milk solids versus the heifer calves used on the best cows are coming out at 555 kilos. So there's a difference of 14 or 15 kilos. And you multiply that by the current milk price, you're looking at €91 per heifer per lactation. So the work that you've done in getting these heifer calves is going to deliver you more money. And also going forward, the heifer calves out of these heifers are going to be far superior to the heifer calves out of the heifers produced on this side. So that's I suppose a quick run through how we're picking cows to use in the breeding season and the effect that it has on the resultant heifer calves. So I suppose in summary, we just need to think more about selecting cows. It's not all about picking bulls. And I suppose by not selecting our best cows, we are effectively slowing down the rate of genetic gain in the herd. And it doesn't cost any more. You're going to buy the same amount of straws as you would if you weren't selecting the cows. So if you select the cows, buy the same amount of straws, and maybe put a plan in place for this breeding season. We still have a month for most people to start the breeding season, and myself and Martin and Kay are available to give you a hand with this if you need it. Thank you.
That's perfect, Paul. So just a question there. If a farmer is using sex semen, how does it impact it on cow selection?
Um, if the farm is using sex semen, it will what it will do, if I can go backwards here now, this these cows here for this particular farmer were picked because he wasn't using sex semen. So we had to pick a larger number of cows, which in turn was going to bring down the average figure of the best cows. Whereas if you were using sex semen, you could pick a smaller number of cows, and you will end up with I suppose a far superior cow selected for the breeding season. So it's just what sex semen does effectively is reduces the number of cows that you have to use for breeding replacement heifers, and therefore you can use the better cows in the herd, so you can move further up along the list.
That's perfect. So thanks very much, Paul. So we'll move on to Kay next. And just a reminder that there is the Q&A function there if anybody came in late there, that you can put in any questions that you have for any of our speakers. So thanks very much, Paul, for that. So we'll just have Kay next now, and Kay is going to be talking about bull selection.
Thanks, Katie. Hello, everybody. Just bear with me a second here now and I share my screen. Now, Katie, does that look like the correct? Does that look okay? Am I sharing the right one? Yeah,
that's good to go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so just following on from Paul, I suppose what I'm talking about here now is the bull selection. So as Paul said, the cow is one half of it, and the other important half is the bull. So you can see on the slide I have here the targets that we would have. Look, it's a personal decision, I suppose, depending on the farm and each. But as a guide, we would be selecting a team of bulls from the point of view of EBI. You were looking at a team of, at least €325. I had a look at the active bull list in ICBF, and I think there's 167 bulls available with an EBI over 290. So there's no reason to be selecting lower than that. There's plenty of bulls out there at high EBI. And then within that, you'd want to be looking at the sub-indexes. So for milk for the team, €105, and fertility greater than €135. So there's plenty of high fertility bulls readily available. And also, as Paul was talking about, looking at the milk and the milk production sub-index. So what we have here is kind of a recommended 30 kilos of solids for your team of bulls. And just be conscious, I suppose, when they're high solids, the 30 kilos plus, you need to look at the source of it as well. Is it all coming from kilos of milk, or is it coming from the percent? So just to delve into that a little bit more, if you want a cow to be able to produce 9% solids, the PTAs for 4% protein and 5% fat are 0.17 on the protein side and 0.26 on the fat side. So you can see there I have any threshold for individual bulls. That's 0.2 for the butter fat or 0.18. So look, you're looking at that for the bull, and then as Paul alluded to, putting that on your higher, your better genetic cows and heifers in the herd will help you push towards the higher percent solids. And at the end of the day, in A plus B minus C, that's what you're getting paid on. The other one then, Paul mentioned about the maintenance sub-index. Look, I suppose try and aim for the €15. It's going to be hard to get bulls to tick all of these, but keep an eye on that one. The same way, health, as herds are maturing, it's getting more and more important. And I know ICBF are working hard towards the future and looking improving health within herds. And from the point of view of carbon, then look, we want them all to be positive. So that's the dairy bull selection. Then regardless of, what Paul mentioned, you'll be starting breeding in a couple of weeks. It's not just dairy bulls you need to look and put thought into, but also the beef. So in the last 2 years, we've actually got more beef calves coming from the dairy herds than dairy calves. And that's expected to continue. So that means there's more beef calves being bred from dairy cows. And this is down to the use of semen. There's less heifers required as expansion has tailed off. So, you need to put a bit of thought into what bulls do you use when breeding beef on your dairy herd. Your aim is going to be to produce a high quality beef calf from the dairy herd that you end up with more saleable, high value calves. I suppose the prices we're getting today won't always be there, or it's hard to know, the variation, but it is important to have a saleable, high value calf. That's going to give the beef finisher better profit at finishing, and while at the same time giving you minimal impact on calving difficulty or gestation length. And that's possible. So to look at that, you need to look at the DBI. So that's the dairy beef index. So it's similar to the EBI. That circle there on the screen is where you can see the breakdown of what's that made up of. There's a big emphasis on the beef traits within that. So the carcass weights, conformation, age at finishing. So within the DBI, you need to look at the beef sub-index. So this is similar, as Paul was pointing out, with EBI, you look at milk and fertility. In the DBI, you need to look at the beef sub-index. And that will then help you to select beef bulls that are going to be easy calving, short gestation, and have good carcass merit, which then will produce high CBV calves. That's what the beef man is looking for, which is the higher stars that they're looking for. So it is possible to select calves with all of that, but just for an example here, there's two bulls. They have the same DBI. They're both, bull A is 190, one bull B is 190. They've got very different sub-indexes within that. So you can see the calving sub-index in bull A is €60, in B it's €15. So quite a difference there. The B sub-index ticks the box. I had said, have at least €100 of a B sub-index. Those two bulls have that. But where you would use those bulls would vary then depending on the calving sub-index and on the carcass weight. So just looking at the cow calving difficulty, bull A, and from the point of view of putting her in heifers, bull A is low for heifers, but bull B is showing up as high risk for heifers. So you need to look at that and look at the carcass weight difference. So in both cases, they're both, if they were early maturing bulls, they're meeting our criteria of at least 10 kilos of carcass weight. But bull B would be very suitable for cows, and you're getting an extra almost 10 kilos of it, or 10 kilos of a difference in carcass weight, as well as an extra gain in age at finishing. So just put a bit of thought into that you look within the DBI, and so you're looking for a beef sub-index of 100, carcass value of at least 10 kilos, and it's very possible to find that. ICBF data has shown that there's plenty of bulls less than 8% calving difficulty. At 3% calving difficulty, there's 123 bulls available on the beef active list at the moment, and they're ranging of a beef sub-index from 39 up to 136. So have a look into that, delve into it, and see that you're meeting those criteria. The other one to bear in mind, just from a practical point of view, if you're in the dairy beef welfare scheme, some farmers have got their payments this week for that. That's the 20 euros a calf, up to 50 calves. That one, the bulls that you're using, the beef bull must be genotyped and be 3 stars for DBI and 3 stars in the beef sub-index, both within and across breeds. So if you follow these criteria, that will tick the box and help you get that payment. And the other one is, if you're not using AI, you can still look up the DBI of the stock bull on the ITBF animal search. You just need to put in the tag number or the code for them, and that information will be available there. As Paul said, Martin and myself and Paul are available to guide in any of this anyway, if anybody has any questions or needs a guide on it. The other thing, so regardless of your dairy and your beef bulls, we would recommend that you use a team of bulls, okay? And that's spreading the risk. So if for up to 100 cows, we would say 7 bulls, use a team of 7 bulls. Back to the comment on what Paul was talking about, reliability. So by using a team, you're spreading the risk and you're improving the reliability of that team. Between 100 and 150 cows, 8 bulls, and up to 200 cows, you need around 10 bulls. So to increase the reliability and reduce the risk, and it's important, no more than 15% of services should be from any one bull. ICBF will say, yes, plenty of herds are using teams of bulls, but when they delve into it and look at the actual usage, there's plenty of cases where one bull might be doing 30, 35, even 40% of the service in that team, and that's pulling back down your risk. So it is something that I'm hearing with farmers and groups and things like that, and they're saying, oh, well, maybe the genomics isn't as good as we thought. But when you question them, they're not spreading the risk by using the team. So just be conscious of that one. And on that, I just have one more slide there, I think, on the use of genomic sires versus daughter-proven sires. This slide here from ICBF is showing the trend in EBI over the last nearly 10 years between daughter-proven, which is the green line, and genomic and Gene Ireland, the first class ones, is the blue and the purple line. And you can see consistently the progeny from the genomic sires are 30% higher in EBI. That equates to around 60 euros. For every €1 in EBI is 2 euros in profit. So that's 60 euros more profit per daughter, and increasing your genetic gain around 2 to 3 years. There's no reason why, if you use a team of bulls and select from the highest genetics available, that you can't get the gain and use genomics. All right. So Katie, if there's any questions.
Yep, so there's one here. What contribution does genetics actually have on the herd performance?
So the performance of the herd on the ground, that's going to depend on, so genetics is going to be reliable, but at the end of the day, genetics is only part of what actually you get on the ground, okay? So there's the management point of view. So that's going to depend on things like the calf rearing, your heifer meeting her target weights, nutrition, health. So if an animal is sick or nutrition is inadequate, you're not going to get the actual genetic potential won't be realized, is what we'll say. So ICBF estimates somewhere 25 to 30% of the genetics is contributing to the actual performance in the ground. So a good bit of it is up to, well, I have the genetics, but it's the management afterwards is going to make the difference in getting it. But I suppose the title of the theme for Breeding Week was realizing that genetic potential, and that's what we're talking about. It's trying to get the genetic potential, have that right, and then we can work on the management afterwards.
No, that's perfect. So we'll move on then to Joris. So Joris is going to be talking about sex semen. So if Yeah, it's okay. You're going to share it there. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, that's
Good,
perfect.
good, good. So I suppose we've now heard about, selecting the right genetics, I suppose, and the right cows for the right purpose and the bulls that will deliver the genetics that you're looking for. But for that to really materialize, you need to have fertile animals to start with. And a lot of that depends on your pre-breeding preparation. And whether you're using conventional semen or sex semen, if you don't have a fertile animal, it will not work. And so a lot of the pre-breeding preparation and working on the fertility already starts even before calving. But if we look at some of the key points that today we could still be looking at, you can see them on the screen there now. So for example, the pre-breeding heat detection, it's the biggest circle on the screen because I think it's the easiest thing we can do. And I would always look at heat detection as being the sign that everything, and detecting heat is a sign that things are working. It's not guaranteeing that you have a fertile animal, but at least the animal herself, she is doing her best to get a normal cycle going, to be bulling, to be showing heat, and then be ready for the breeding season. So the pre-breeding heat detection will flag those animals that are definitely in trouble because they are not bulling, whether it's a silent heat or whether there's nothing actually happening. Those animals will be picked up through pre-breeding heat detection. And then during that pre-breeding time, what you are really looking at is maybe doing some health checks on those animals that maybe haven't been seen bulling, but definitely on the animals that are showing erratic signs of bulling because they could be having cysts, but also animals that had a difficult calving, animals that had milk fever, or maybe animals that had a C-section or an LDA after calving. Those animals definitely need to be seen by, I would say, a vet preferably, but if you have somebody scanning cows for you and they would be able to check out those animals, they might at least be able to tell you whether or not there is some activity on the ovaries of the animals and if there is something that needs to be followed up then. Because if you do that today, you still have a couple of weeks to sort out those animals and try and get them into that normal fertility cycle by the time breeding actually starts. Obviously, right now is also the time to look at your cow selection, not necessarily from the genetic perspective, the way it was put to you by Paul and Kay, but actually from animals that last year you maybe thought, oh, there was a few issues with them. They've had a couple of cases of mastitis, they're chronically lame, whatever. I don't like the look of her. She's not an easy cow to deal with. She's a very slow milking cow. Those sort of things that right now you select the cows that are not going to be used for breeding because it's much more difficult that once you're in the breeding season and they are in calf to actually then row back on that. So if you can make a selection now, that would be ideal. And you can use your data from the milk recording for that. There's also a functionality in ICBF, which is completely underutilized, which is called the cow's own worth. And that will actually tell you which cows are pulling their weight and which ones are costing you money in the herd. Sex semen decisions, we'll come to that in a minute, and I'll give you a bit more detail on that. The same on the vaccines. Now is the time to be doing your pre-breeding vaccines. Don't leave it until the breeding season is about to start because it'll be too late and you will not get the full cover from the start of the breeding season. But there are some tweaks you could do if you're running short on time. Somebody else has already mentioned the sire selection. I won't go through that again. But overall, your pre-breeding animal health is really important and it ties in with your pre-breeding nutrition. And your early lactation nutrition of those cows. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And there is a point here about synchronization of heifers. If that is something that you would like to do, make sure you have it talked through with your vet because ultimately they are going to be the ones providing you with those products and they'll be the ones guiding you through what is the best timing of using that if you want to go down that route. So if you go to the next slide, I want to touch on 4 key points. Okay, yeah, thank you, that one. So in the top left corner, that's really about actual disease control. And most of the Tirlan milk suppliers, they make use of the herd disease screening, and that provides you with results. So in the next week or two, you will actually be receiving your first results of 2025. And I would really suggest you look at those because that will tell you where is the vaccination status of the herd at, but also has it been able to control diseases? You might see that over the winter, something like an IBR or something like a lepto actually went through the herd, and you may not have noticed it, but it's interesting to see the results then on a 12-month rolling basis to see, have I seen an increase in those diseases? Because they are important. They actually impact your fertility, or at least the cow's fertility during the breeding season. Parasite control is another one. If you had a high reading for Ostertasia, stomach worms, or liver fluke back in the autumn, and you implemented a control strategy over the winter, has that worked? Well, the only way to really find that out in your milking cows is looking at those results and seeing that the result has gone from positive to negative, or to at least to low positive if you came from a high positive. So that's something that I would look at in those results. And if things haven't worked, you still have a little bit of time to correct it. If you look at the pre-breeding list there in the box number 2, the one on the bottom left, I've already mentioned that a bit. So it's about creating that list of animals that will need to be seen just to make sure that they're okay. And if they're not, that you still have time to treat those, and that you continue on. And that's where your pre-breeding heat detection really comes into force, and shows the benefits. One piece I really would like to point out from an animal health perspective is lameness. We don't focus enough on lameness and the impact that has on fertility. So the graph that you see there actually has the 4 lines on it, shows you the empty rate in the herd through the breeding season. So if you look at the black line, for example, you see that one drops quite slowly, and those are animals that are lame before the breeding season, during the breeding season, and are still lame at the end of the breeding season. So a fairly high empty rate in those. You compare that to the green line, which is cows that are never lame, not before, during, or after the breeding season, and you can see their empty rate drops much quicker, and they have a much lower empty rate at the end of the breeding season. The yellow line are cows that start off lame, but come right, and during the breeding season actually catch up in fertility anyway with the green line. Whereas the red line are cows that start off sound, so they're sound before the breeding season, but as the year progresses, they actually become lame, and ultimately their fertility really suffers, and they have as bad of a fertility nearly as the ones that are always lame. So if you feel lameness is an issue in your farm, now is the time to do something about it. Because if you can make those animals sound again before the breeding season starts, it won't have an impact on their fertility. But if that isn't possible, you can see there is a huge gap there of nearly 20% difference in empty rate between those categories. And then the last point on preparing the animals is really the number 4 there. The basic point is avoid excessive body condition loss during the pre-breeding time, right? And people will call out, oh, don't let them lose more than 0.5 in a body condition score and so on. That's only relevant if you're actually body condition scoring, right? And I strongly recommend it, but not everybody does that. There are a few other pieces you can look at, but body condition score is just a symptom, I suppose, from negative energy balance, low energy in the diet of the animals not being able to take in as much energy as they need to grow and produce milk. But there are a few other markers you can look at. If you're milk recording, you can certainly look at your milk solids. And early lactation, low protein in cows' milk is a clear indication of the cows not having enough energy in the diet. And when I say low protein, milk protein, I mean less than 3.05%. You can do it at a bulk tank level, but it's not as accurate. When you look at the bulk tank, you're probably more interested in something like your butter fat to protein ratio. So that's one where you can really see that the cows aren't able to maintain a ratio of 1.4 to 1 sort of butter fat to milk protein. And if that changes, if your butter fat sort of gets away from your protein, that means that there's, again, not enough energy in the diet for those cows. And that's where some of you may already have been contacted by the nutritionists in Tirlan, because we are really focusing on that this year through our milk solids tracker and reporting back to you where that ratio is and how you can change the diet and keep the energy going into the cows. What you can also look at, and this is purely on the bulk tank, that you can really monitor this very easily when you get the text message on your cell count figure, your solids figure, you'll also see milk urea being reported there. And you want that milk urea to be somewhere between 20 and 35. If this starts to rise above 35. And at the moment, it shouldn't be above 35 because the protein level in the grass that the cows are grazing at the moment is manageable. And the protein that they take in through the concentrate is not excessive either. But as the spring grass starts coming, you will see the protein in the grass really increase, but the cows might not be taking in enough energy to actually digest all the protein that is in that diet. And that protein that is not digested is then wasted as urea. And it's wasted through the milk and through the urine and through the dung. And that's why the milk reading of urea will actually tell you how well are your cows able to utilize all this really valuable protein that's in their diet, whether it's being wasted or whether it's being put to good use as milk solids. And that's why we report that. But what it's also doing, urea being a waste product of the protein metabolism, is it's actually a toxin to the cow's fertility. It's toxic to the eggs that are going to be ovulating in a month or 2 months' time. So even if you have high milk urea in 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before the breeding season starts, so well before you're hoping to inseminate cows and fertilize those eggs, it's already going to impact the egg quality when those eggs are ready and have ovulated. So it's important to keep an eye on that over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, and take action that if you see the milk urea really rise and go above the 35, and especially if it starts going to 40 and higher, that you take action and introduce more energy into the animal's diet, something plain and simple like a beet pulp or a citrus pulp, something that really brings that sugar, that starch to the cows, that gives them the energy but doesn't add to the protein level in the diet because they get plenty of that in the grass. So that's part of the preparation. If you now go to the next slide, I'll spend a couple more minutes talking about the sexed semen and why the timing of using sexed semen is much more tricky than when you use conventional semen. So if you look at the arrow at the top of the screen, that really shows you at the starting point of the arrow is the start of a standing heat. Now, if you're using collars or ear tags that monitor the heat activity in the herd, you can nearly down to the hour say when standing heat started, okay? If you're using tail paint, it's not as accurate. But the start point of standing heat to the cow actually ovulating is at least 24 hours. So a cow that is in standing heat at 2 o'clock in the morning last night, she will actually ovulate after 2 o'clock tomorrow night. And if you want to inseminate an animal successfully, you need to be close enough to the ovulation, but you can't leave it too long that once the egg is ovulated, it will only survive for about 8 to 10 hours. Now, the semen that is inseminated, if it's let's talk about conventional semen first. Conventional semen is much more robust because it hasn't been manipulated as much, it hasn't been handled as much, but it takes a long time to actually, once it's inseminated, once the straw has been emptied into the cow, it actually takes quite a bit of time for that to be ready to swim into the cow's reproductive tract and go and fertilize that oocyte or the egg that was ovulated. And that's why you need to give it that bit of time to prepare itself and travel the distance and be ready for when that animal ovulates. If you only inseminate an animal on the point of ovulation, the semen is going to be too late and the egg will have actually already withered and won't be fertile anymore. Now, the difference between the conventional semen and the sexed semen is why is the window for sexed semen so much shorter is partially because it's been manipulated a bit more. The sexed semen is a little bit more delicate, so it won't survive as long. But the big difference is actually to do the sexing, they have to remove a protective coating from the semen, from the sperm cells. It's called capacitation. I compare it to bubble wrap that is around each sperm cell in conventional semen. But to be able to sex the semen cells, they have to take the bubble wrap off them during the processing and when they're creating the straws. So when sexed semen is inseminated into a cow, you don't need to allow for those additional 8 hours or 10 hours that it takes the conventional semen to come out of the bubble wrap. The sexed semen is already there. And that's why where you can get away with conventional semen, inseminating a cow nearly at the start of the standing heat and letting the semen do its own thing, coming out of the bubble wrap and traveling up the reproductive tract. With sex semen, you don't have that time. You have to wait a lot longer after the start of the standing heat. Now, again, if you have collars or other ways of identifying the actual start of the standing heat, you can time it very specifically. 12 hours after the start of the standing heat is when you start going in with your sex semen, and you have about 8 hours, an 8 hour window from there to successfully inseminate with sex semen. Whereas with conventional semen, you have a lot more room to play with. The opposite, and this is probably not as relevant, but just to show you the difference at the end of the insemination window, because there is not that unwrapping of the semen cells required, if you're really close to ovulation, and I'm saying, if you're leaving it, let's say, to 8 hours of the point of ovulation, conventional semen is going to be late in any event. But with sex semen, you might still be able to fertilize that egg if you left it a little bit late during the heat to actually inseminate. So you could actually have a chance there, but there's a benefit there to using sex semen if you've left it a little bit late. So that's trying to explain why there's such a difference between the sex semen and why the timing is much more important. That's it for me, Katie.
Perfect. Thanks, Joris. So we have a question in relation to pre-breeding scanning. So the question is, when is the best time to carry this out? And should all animals be pre-breeding scanned or just the non-cycling animals?
Yeah, it's a good question. In a previous life, I actually spent quite a bit of time doing pre-breeding scanning as part of a research project, and I would have scanned every cow because they obviously wanted to see, and every heifer as well, they wanted to see what's the difference 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out from the start of breeding between animals that had no issue coming out of the calving season and animals that had maybe a difficult calving or haven't been seen bulling. I don't recommend every animal is scanned in every herd, okay? From that research, it was very clear that animals that had no issues, that are well fed, that have a good mineral balance, and have signs of heat, do not need a pre-breeding scan. So the pre-breeding heat detection is very important there to identify the cows that do need to be seen. I would then add, even if they have already shown signs of heat, any animal that had a troublesome calving, because there is still a chance that they have a little bit of dirt, a bit of inflammation in the reproductive tract, that even though they have already cycled, it might still need a little bit of extra care just to make sure that everything is right for the embryo to nest in there and have a calf coming out of that. The other thing I would add to that is it's a good time to look at your heifers and the weight of your heifers. So I would have scanned a lot of heifers the day after they were weighed, and any herd I went to, if the heifers were not hitting 300 kg, there was no activity on their ovaries. I'm not saying they were fertile ones to hit the 300 kg, right? They're not at the weight yet that you want them to be for the breeding season, but at least if you have them weighed now, and they're a bit behind, you still have 30, maybe for some herds, 40 days at this stage to try and push them on a bit. And the same goes for the pre-breeding scanning of the troublesome cows. You still have a couple of weeks now to get them treated and let them cycle once before the breeding season starts, because that one cycle will really help them reboot and go back to the start, so to speak. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. Thanks very much for that, Joris, and thanks, Kay, for running the slideshow there. So we're going to move on there to Donal Murphy and Martin Doyle, and they're going to be talking about the farmer experience in relation to genetics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Donal, yeah, we can hear you there now.
Perfect, thank you.
So Martin is going to share your slides now.
Sorry, my screen disappeared.
Okay.
Is that the right view now?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay,
Thanks.
so thanks, Katie. this is going to be just a quick interview with Donal. So I thank Donal for making himself available anyway to partake in the breeding. Take in the breeding webinar this morning, as we mentioned, Donal has a prize-winning cow, so from the RDS, and you're the owner of a lovely cow, Donal. So with that in mind, we said you're more than qualified to give us some thoughts on the breeding season.
I'm not so
If
sure
we
about that, Martin. But anyway, I'll
well,
do my best.
I think your cow knows different. So if we look at your 5-year trend, just as a starting point, so this is the EBI, the overall, and the green line is the top 10%, and the blue line is where your herd is. So your herd is at 213 at the moment. Just to keep that performance in line with the top 10%, do you use genomic sires or dot proven, or what do you
It's
target?
nearly all genomic sires, and even we'd look at a lot of G1 sires. We've used quite a few G1 sires within that. So yeah, we'd be always looking for the latest bulls.
So you're willing to accept lower reliability or possible upswings, downswings to get the gain?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've been at it for probably 10 years or 12 years at this stage. So I think, yeah, I think obviously there's a bit of swings and roundabouts, but I think the direction of travel using genomic bulls seems to me to be the right one anyway.
Well, the graph says, yeah, you haven't had a big dip anyway, so it's going right on paper.
Yeah.
Two of the main index, the EBI, there's two main indexes in EBI. One is milk and sub-index, and one's fertility. This is the milk sub-index. Again, the green line is top 10%, and the blue line is your own. So you've been ahead, below, above, slightly in line with the top 10% anyway for the last 5 years. When you're at the top of something, is it very hard for you to get bulls that will give improvement?
Yeah, well, we would still stick to probably the same. I mean, when we're looking for the milk index, it's solid. It's probably where the reward is. I mean, we would have been coming from being a purely liquid milk herd, and probably taste volume historically. But in more recent years, we wouldn't look beyond maybe 300 kilos of milk volume. Now we don't look at negative bulls really either. Bulls that dip below zero are very rarely. So we're trying to steer that middle ground. So, but we're probably losing a little bit on volume. But we try to pick up on milk solids. We'll be selecting for 30 plus kilos of milk solids usually in our bulls that we pick.
So you're able to find bulls to suit your requirements anyway, even though you're at the top of certain indices.
Some people that I think Kay said it there. There's loads of bulls there, and even we only use pedigree bulls, and that cuts your choice by half. But even within that, there's loads of bulls. Now I do notice, all right, that the genetic gain in the EBI seems to be slowing down a bit. It is plateauing a bit, but yeah, still there's plenty of bulls there that will give you improvement, I think.
So the second index we just touch on was fertility. So again, you're the blue line, and the top 10% is the green line. You're flying at it. You're on an upward trajectory. You're at 100. You have a split calving herd, spring and autumn. There's some room for movement in your herd, but why do you're still trying to emphasize fertility?
Yeah, well, we would have had problems back, I think, as most people had, and maybe we were a bit slower to address it. But yeah, I think up around 100, or I think beyond that, maybe the gain to be got from a higher fertility index might wane a little bit. I mean, it's not like milk production. Theoretically, there's never an end to the gain. I mean, if a cow goes in calf once a year, if her index is 100 or 200, if you're doing the job, I mean, that's good enough, I think. So, yeah, we would still follow fertility, but I wouldn't say to the same extent that maybe we did in the earlier years.
But you're not routinely letting cows slip between seasons or anything like that.
Well, we do have a bit of slippage because we bring in all our heifers in the autumn, and so then we do have a little bit. We only bull for 7 weeks in the autumn, so but our two seasons are quite close together. So some will run from one autumn into spring. Very, very rare that we bring too many cows from spring back around to autumn because that's just too long.
Okay. So this is the most recent that Paul put a similar slide up earlier. This is from Sire Advice. So Sire Advice is where you can, on ICBF, you can set criteria for bulls, and then Sire Advice will pick the most suitable cows for those bulls. So the idea of trying to get performance is, that your weighted bull average should be higher than your cows, basically. That way your predicted calves should be higher. So here we have our weighted bull average, and nearly every index that's higher than the cows, which means the calves should have calves that with higher EBI, higher milk, higher fertility, whatever, than the cows in the existing herd. That's the way that you would try and increase performance, as Paul highlighted earlier. This then here, sorry, I'll just go back a slide. There's plenty of criteria here. What do you actually, I know you mentioned milk solids. What else do you look at when it comes to your breeding choices?
Yeah, well, we will start with a bottom of EBI. I'd say this year probably we didn't look at anything below 300. We'll do this on the sire selection screen in ICBS. And then we would set it for a certain amount of solids. Normally we look at over 30 combined solids. And beyond that, I think Joris mentioned some functionality is another thing we look at. Because we would have seen maybe a bit more trouble with lameness in the last 2 years. Well, I don't know whether some of it is probably genetic, some of it is probably because the bigger herd cows are having to work that little bit harder to get in and out of grass. So it's probably become as big of a culling reason for us as somatic cell count. Maybe not quite as much as empty cows, but it certainly is probably the second or third highest reason for culling that we would have now at this stage.
So with a big herd of cows, you have a big land area. You said lameness and walking. I know roadways are part of it, but the cows do have to walk.
Yeah, so we would keep an eye on certainly on the lameness within the index, and maybe others as well, because that sometimes can cause us an issue as well. But yeah, but the two big indexes are still the main thing that we select on. We don't try to go over the top with milk. We try to hit sort of middle of the road. We try to keep volume and look for an improvement with solids. So by maintaining volume and improving the percentages, like you'd hope to push on to what I think Kay mentioned there is 9% cow. That's probably the target going forward. The 9% cow across the herd.
Okay, so this was a team of bulls that were put together on Sire Advice at the start. Well, it's on Sire Advice at the moment. So there's 8 bulls here. Again, as you mentioned, there's no EBI below 300. The milk and fertility Kay mentioned the figure of 90, so you're well above that. We had kilos of fat and protein. Your minimum is 30, I think, and up to 41. And your fat and protein percentages, I think the minimum is 0.29 and you're up to 0.51. So you're definitely focusing on all them. Maybe we'll just look at this funny one here in the middle, maintenance. So Paul mentioned maintenance, and so basically a zero value is relates to the live weight of a cow of a third lactation cow in mid-pregnancy. So basically if these bulls were going to give offspring heifers that turn into cows, and in third lactation mid-pregnancy it was a euro value, that'd be a live weight of 640 kilos. A 1 value then would be take 5 off that, it'd be a live weight of 535. But you've got one here at 21, which would be a live weight of 535, I think. So you have a massive swing from 640 to 535. You take any heed to it at all of live weight size?
We do, yeah. And certainly we would use the likes of that Pinnacle Grand Slam with a maintenance of 21. That's the bull we would use maybe on bigger cows, historically bigger cows. that still have good EBIs, and we like the breeding of them. But we're trying to even off the size a bit, but it's not. We have probably a bigger herd of cows than in their physical size than an average. It's not something we ever set out to have a big herd of cows. It seems that's the way it's progressed. I suppose maybe we historically picked higher milk bulls, which maybe have a little bit more Holstein than a lot of herds. Like we're fairly heavily stocked. We feed somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 tons of meal a year. We're two calving periods, so we're trying to push out good volume of milk, a good milk solid. So I think that slightly bigger cow probably suits our system, but at the same time, I would like to breed out the really big tall cows. There's not too many left now, and get that sort of average cow, maybe a little bit bigger than what other herds have, but it's a personal choice. I mean, it's cows for systems as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you have a very extensive land base and you're stuck with a 2.5 cows per hectare or less, that smaller cow and you would probably suit the system better, in my opinion, and you get away with maybe half ton of meal or less. But just our grazing platform is quite tight. So, and as I say, we calve and we cows then dry in the back end, which suits the system and takes cows off the system. So, that slightly bigger cow, I think, suits us.
So I just back to again, you're making double use of sire advice. You're sort of definitely choosing the cows, nearly selective mating, putting certain bulls against certain cows to do the job for you.
Yeah, well, we would. I'd have to say now we would. There's a certain element, and I think I think it's important, and Joris is talking about it as well as regards sex semen. Putting everything on sire advice and leaving a list for the AI man, for me, that when it's helpful, I think you need to be on the job on every given day as well, particularly with sex semen. I know didn't ask me about that yet, but I think you have to make decisions around time and the right cows maybe on the day. And the same, we would do a little bit the same with cow size. It's very hard to match everything in sire selection, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
So yeah, okay. So you just don't let it run. You just don't do it once and let it run. You're actively looking at breeding as the season takes place.
Yeah, well, we will run it, but we would also maybe like in sire selection you have a 1, 2, 3 choice,
Yes,
and sometimes you look at a cow and you pick choice 2 or choice 3 for her, if you know what I mean.
I do. The sex semen. There used to be an S. You'd come up on the net after the bull if it was sex semen. I don't see an S here, but you're using sex semen.
Yeah, well, that's the actual bulls we used in January and February of this year. We had sex semen in the pot of all except one of those bulls. But again, it was an on the day decision because it was down to timing. We used a heat detection system, so when we would look at our list of cows that are bulling, I would look back and see. I preferably like to see them with 2 strong heats on the system, between 19 and 23 or 4 days previous to the actual service date. So that's how we decide. And if the timing is off, we use a conventional bull, and if it's right, we use a sex bull. So that's how we worked it for the last couple of years.
Okay, and the final one is back to Kay. So this was what we found with just 2 bulls on what Kay mentioned. Sorry about dairy beef. This was 2 beef bulls on your sire advice, an Aberdeen Angus and a Belgian Blue. Kay mentioned a figure of 100 for the beef value, so you're over that. We mentioned 10 kilos of carcass. Well, if you round it up, we're at 10 for the Aberdeen Angus and 20 for conventional. We're nearly there. How do you decide which cows get the beef straws, I suppose?
Well, sure, I suppose, as I pointed out earlier, the main selection is done on EBI. We do a little bit of selection beyond that on functionality. If a cow was, as I said, lame, had poor feet, poor udder, we wouldn't put a dairy straw. And beyond that, we would probably go early in the season with Belgian Blue certainly in the first round on the maybe third calf upwards, and with the Aberdeen Angus on the younger cows, and then later in the season it would be all Aberdeen Angus, just trying to squeeze that gestation period, not to have them too late.
Okay. That's it, Katie. I think that's all I had for Donal.
Yeah, perfect. So there's a couple of questions there for you, Donal. So, do you think that 2 beef bulls are enough for your herd?
Well, no, that was run as just to divide between, I suppose, Angus and Belgian Blue. No, we had a few more than that. Well, we certainly had more Angus. I don't think we had another Belgian Blue bull. But ideally, yeah, you would have more bulls. Obviously,
Okay.
just in case, certainly from a fertility point of view, in case you came across a dud.
Yeah. And the second question there is, how do you feel about the new IP requirements for the Gene Ireland program? Just in relation to the terms and conditions that need to be reviewed before you sign up. What's your opinion on it?
Well, I suppose I'd have to share a bit of conflict of interest. I'm on the board of Progressive Genetics, so if anybody comes back, that's relation made. It won't be a big issue. I mean, I think if the main thing is about selling bulls, and it's the idea, to my mind, is to prevent our genetics within the country, which like we've worked hard to build, to prevent it being sort of taken abroad without our permission and used maybe, or for another company from abroad, a big company maybe come in and with lots of money and just buy up all the best bulls, and maybe not with the best interest of farmers in mind. I think the whole thing has to be that we have the best genetics available to farmers. I think it's worked really, really well for us. And I think at the moment we're one of the few places in the world where that's not being protected. One of the main dairy areas anyway. We're one of the few that don't protect it at the moment, and I think it's probably just a safeguard against things going wrong on it.
Okay. No, that's perfect. So, thanks very much to Donal and Martin there. So we might just do a quick summary there on the presentations that were shown. So, in relation to all the slides that you've seen, so the steps that you could take as farmers now. So basically identify your herd's genetics, and that's looking through your EBI scorecards that Paul went through. The second one there would be breed from your highest EBI females, ideally anything over €185 or more. Select from a team of bulls that are high EBI and they're on the active bull list on ICBF. Use a team of bulls, so ideally you'd be using 8 bulls for cow herds of up to 100 cows, and ideally you wouldn't be using 15% of any one bull. You'd choose bulls that have low TB values of less than 8.5%. You use high DBI bulls for the AI beef bulls that are being used, and ideally you'd be picking ones that have €100 beef subindex and 10 kilos for the carcass weight. If you are using sex semen, then so use at least 2 high EBI bulls for sex straws, and complete sex semen insemination in the first 3 weeks of the breeding season. Use your herd plus sire advice then on ICBF to optimize then the mating for both dairy and beef bulls. And if you need help, then your advisors are available. Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody that joined us on the webinar today, and thanks to the speakers, especially Joris and Donal, for their valuable contributions there. And if anybody does require any further information there, if you can go on to the Teagasc website and look up the breeding week, there's a few articles and podcasts available there for you to view. So I'd like to thank you again. And there is a few other events happening there also within the unit. So if you are available, maybe have a look at them as well. Thanks, everybody.